Hi, everyone. My name is Omer Mirza,
I'm Adan, but
and our presentation is titled Laughing Through the Pain Humor in Modern Hebrew Literature. Um, we'll be exploring how humor, especially irony, satire, and absurdism, plays a vital role in modern Hebrew literature.
through the works of Mir Shalev and Said Kashua, we'll also show how laughter can become a tool for survival, resistance, and storytelling as well.
Okay, on to the next slide. So, the introduction. To begin with, this presentation is about how Israeli authors use humor, especially irony, satire, and absurdism, like mentioned before, to explore complex and often painful themes. We'll focus on two important voices, Mir Shalev and Sayed Kashua. These writers show us how laughter becomes a way to process trauma, question national myths, and survive in a complicated society. We'll also explore why humor is such a powerful tool in modern Hebrew literature, especially in a country where conflict and contradiction are a part of daily life. So Mir Shalev is known for his witty stories, and Sayed Kashwa is known for his use of dark humor through his storytelling.
So the next slide I have is why do authors use humor in modern Hebrew literature? Um, I feel like before we dive into going to specifics regarding the authors, I feel like it's important to ask yourself, like, why is humor um, such a main well, like why is it so important to modern Israeli storytelling? Um, in a country where it's constantly around involves a lot of trauma, conflict, identity, um, humor becomes like a really powerful source. So it helps a lot of people be able to like cope, resist, and also reflect. And most of the time, it involves all three. Um, Also, a lot of writers like to use irony, satire, and absurdism to be able to talk about the serious issues in a certain way that is both accessible and impactful. Humor, but they use humor for them to be able to tell the truth while still getting a laugh about it or at least like a little smirk, so it's a little less serious.
So on to the first writer, Mir Shalev. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Mir Shalev was one of Israel's most celebrated novelists, born in 1948 in Nahalal, Israel, the same year the state of Israel was established. His writing reflects both a deep personal connection to the country and a sharp awareness to its contradictions. He's known for his witty lyrical style and for mixing biblical themes with personal and national history. So he likes to mix kind of religious themes into it. In books like The Blue Mountain, he uses humor and surrealism to challenge idealized notions of Zionism and community life. In the top right, there's a picture of him, and in the bottom right, it's his book, The Blue Mountain, which me and my partner Don mostly focused on.
The next slide is humor in Mir Shalv's work. So his writing stands out a lot for how he's able to blend a lot of very absurd and fantastical elements with a lot of real historical settings that are going on. So, for example, like in our slide, which is the Blue Mountain, he creates a village where the past and the present are somewhat blurred, and humor is where it comes in from like the bizarre ways of how people cling on to the ideology or the tradition of it. And he also gently mocks the idealized Zionist dream while still showing empathy for the people living it. His use of magical realism allows him to talk about trauma, legacy, and also national identity in a way that's playful and not too profound.
All right. The next writer we focused on is Sayed Kashua, who is a Palestinian writer who writes in Hebrew, and that's a choice that already speaks volumes about his complex identity. Because, as we all know, the conflict between Palestine and Israel, even now and back then, it's still been going on, and hopefully it gets resolved soon. He was born in 1975, so a little more recent than Mir Shalev, and he's yeah, like that's basically his identity. How he uses humor is often dark and biting, to explore the struggles of being an Arab in a Jewish majority state in Israel. Through his novels and his hit TV show Arab Labor, Kashua gives voice to the contradictions and discomforts of living between two worlds. He's a master of satire and self irony, showing us how humor can expose and survive societal tension. And that's a picture of him on the right. And he's a very sarcastic writer.
Next slide is humor inside Kashua's work. So I found his humor to be a lot different than compared to other authors because it's a lot more darker and it's a lot more personal. So, for example, in Dancing Arab, which also we provided a picture in the slide, he doesn't just tell a story. It's more on how he exposes the absurdity of being able to navigate in a society that constantly asks him to prove who he is, and whether it's him getting profiled or misunderstood or even tokenized. Um, his characters and the way he expresses himself is through humor. So that basically expresses the frustration without it becoming too bitter. Um, there's a lot of shows like, for example, Arab Labor Flip, and that stereotypes on their head, which is using satire to challenge both Jewish and Arab influences to be able to think differently.
So literary functions of humor. So what role does humor really play in this? In the works of authors like Shalov and Kashua, it's more than entertainment, and me and Adan found it to be more like strategy. Humor lets writers tackle hard truths without losing the audience. It disarms, it connects, and it reveals. And in a country full of contradictions, religious versus secular, Arab versus Jewish, obviously, and trauma versus hope, humor becomes a language everyone can understand, even it makes them comfortable. Even my personal experiences, like even in a uncomfortable situation or in like a negative time in my life, humor always sparks up and it allows people to come together. And in their works, humor makes pain more approachable and it bridges the gaps between communities, like mentioned before, Jewish, Arab, even in this situation, but even in uh, regular life, like humor, old, young people, that's one thing they can connect through is humor. So that's why I feel like these two used humor because it connects audiences through a way that is very common.
So the more important question is, why does it matter today? So humor in modern Hebrew literature, it isn't a thing that's from the past. It's in fact really, really relevant to this day and more than ever. Israel today is still facing a lot of conflict and political tension. A lot of the writers and artists, they continue expressing humor to be able to speak truth to power, and also connect across divides. Um, the legacy of Shalov and Keshua lives on through a lot of newer voices nowadays who also use satire and absurdism to address the modern life in Israel. Um, in a time when they get really burned out on seriousness, humor becomes one of the few ways where something people can express themselves differently show to say something that's like very genuine and real, and it gets a lot of people to listen because it's a lot more open and it's not too strict.
To basically wrap it up and conclude, humor in modern Hebrew literature is more than just a literary device. It's a way for people to cope with reality, challenge dominant narratives, and speak out for what they believe and express who they really are. Authors like Shalov and Kashua show us how laughter, even when it's uncomfortable or absurd, can bring people together and spark critical thinking and form new opinions and talk about them. By laughing through the pain, these writers help us see the world and ourselves with clearer eyes. Um, like said in the slides, it's used for processing trauma, challenging power, expressing identity, and in their works, it's shown how it's both deeply personal and socially powerful. So yeah, and then these were the sources we used, books by both authors, and then how Cashua had the TV and media show. Me and him actually watched it, and some of the articles. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.